Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Earth.University's Passion Professors podcast with your hosts, Lindsay and Driotti. It's here that you can learn about and connect with other passionate people who are also changing the world just like you, where passion is shared and dreams are there so humanity can be served exponentially. We focus on the passion of the world and connecting people to what they love most.
All right, good. Welcome everybody to the Passion Professor podcast. I have with me today a dear friend and an awesome, amazing human being, Chris Natzke from Denver, Colorado. I just have to say, this is a guy who's up to some very amazing things for our youth and for our mindset in the world. And Chris, I welcome you here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, Lindsay, it's an absolute pleasure. It's great to see you again on Zoom. I know that listeners may not be able to see you, but I can, and it's great, and just really appreciate this opportunity.
Oh, well, me too. I'm so honored to have you here. We are learners, all of us here in this world, and at Earth.University, everybody's getting pointed to what their passion is and what they're excited about. I'd love to have you tell our viewers just a little bit about what is Chris Natzke passionate about right now, and what are you up to?
What am I up to? Well, you know, it's funny how the things that created passion in us early in life oftentimes continue to show up in the same, maybe in different ways, but the same thing, right? So to just give you a little bit of context for the listeners, and I know you know this well, but I'm a career martial arts practitioner and instructor. So I started my martial art training in the early 1970s, 1973 to be exact. And, you know, that what I really came to find, even though I've had wonderful success, both professionally in martial arts as well as teaching and competing and all that stuff, is that the real root of it was about developing people to find their power and to change that mindset. And I was certainly gifted in my life to have mentors within the martial arts world. My main instructor, as a matter of fact, to help me understand what I call having the mind of a champion. And that wasn't just having success in the ring, although that was part of it, but it was helping me to find, and then me helping others to find that inner champion inside of us so that we can express that in our life. And that's really what the gist of my work continues to be.
I absolutely love that. And I would be so curious, because I know you are a champion both in and outside the martial arts ring. You have overcome many obstacles. You have dealt with all kinds of crazy stuff in your life, just like most every other human being, right? And what I would love to know from you is, what do you see is the mindset of a champion? Maybe the top 3 or 4 things, whatever number it is. But, you know, tell us a little bit about that, because I think a lot of people are looking for that. What could I zero in on?
Sure. That's a great question. Well, one of the first things I guess that I'd share with everyone is that champions really have great visions, you know, have a vision for what we want to create in our life, what we want to attract. And when I do my coaching and my speaking, I speak about that almost always the first thing, which is what I call have a purposeful vision. So what is it that you really want? And you know, I had a coach or a teacher tell me at one time, if you're going to fantasize, you might as well win, right? And
right? Oh my God, I love that. That's amazing.
Right? And many times what we do is we default to, oh, I don't know if this can happen, or what if this, you know, takes place this way. But the real champions, we dream big, right? And that'd be the first thing that I would say to people.
I like that.
The second thing is to, and I'm kind of just giving you an overview of what I speak a lot about, is understand that there will be obstacles and prepare for those obstacles. So I think where many people get off track, where they lose their championship edge, if they will, is they have this great vision, and then the first time an obstacle comes, they get off track or they fall apart because that wasn't part of their vision. And there's a great author, her name is Gabrielle Ottingen. She wrote a book called Rethinking Positive Thinking. And she has this concept called WOOP, W-O-O-P, WOOP. Okay. And WOOP is an acronym, and W stands for what's your wish. The first O is what's the outcome that you want to achieve. But then the second O is what is the obstacle that might present itself. And then P stands for what's your plan for dealing with that obstacle.
Cool. I like that.
I think that, and I think of my own personal life, when I've been able to move through obstacles versus getting sidetracked, it's because when they came, like, okay, there it is. Now what I'm going to do versus, oh, I must, I get off track as a result of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I think the final thing is it's kind of a combination. You and I have had this conversation before, is to get really clear on what our gifts and our passions are, and then take action. And most of the time, those gifts are about service. Where can we really service the highest level? But then make sure that we're taking action, however, how small it is.
Yeah,
if
that's
it's making a phone call, if it means, getting up and taking a walk in the morning, if it means whatever that project is or whatever, you need to take consistent action. And
I love that.
Consistent action over time produces great results.
Well, this is actually very true. And when you're teaching martial arts in particular, and I don't know, are you still teaching martial arts?
I am.
You are? Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So when you think about an obstacle that presents itself in the martial arts world, what kinds of things are you preparing people for in that also could maybe translate to life?
Sure. Well, I'll use this metaphor. I mean, in many martial art practices, and particularly the one that I've been doing for the last 4 decades, we break boards. Okay. Yeah. That's an obstacle, right?
Yeah.
But what's neat is I've actually now taken that, and I have a corporate program where I actually take that into the corporate boardroom and into
literally board.
Yeah, literally, right? Literally, break it through the board, and I take it into events or whatever. And what the board becomes this metaphor for moving through the obstacle, not just to the obstacle, right? And so when I do that course, they actually write their breakthrough area on one side of the board. The other side of the board is what's been holding them back, their limiting belief that's been holding them back. And then I instruct them how to do that physically. And so when we do this in martial arts, and martial arts is kind of set up in a way where you're constantly always being challenged, right? Whether it's a new curriculum you're learning, or then you're tested every 3 months or whatever. And so there's always these little challenges that happen. And what ends up happening when you've gone through that process for a while, you begin to build a muscle, if you will, for dealing with challenge and adversity. It just becomes, and what happens is people's level, I believe, their level of happiness and satisfaction actually grows, because when are we usually happiest? It's when we've overcome something. And we feel best about ourselves.
That is the truth. As soon as you can put a win in the win column, you feel great, no matter what the win was. Even just getting to work faster or easier with more grace and not getting upset with the cars in front of you. Can be
right. I mean,
for some people,
Right.
Yeah.
It's just the next thing that's up, right? And I'm not saying that's always easy. I'm not saying that I never go, oh man, why is this happening again? But then it's about turning that around, because that's where our greatest opportunity is. I'd venture to say that any of your listeners out there, if we were to ask them, what are the moments in your life you're most proud of? Most of them would at least tell a couple of where they overcame something.
You're right.
And they came out on the other side. And that's what they feel best about.
I love that. I'm actually working right now with the ninjas from American Ninja Warrior.
All right.
And, their whole world is about getting past and overcoming obstacles. That's what they focus on all the time. And I love what you're saying, because it's relevant directly to what they're doing, but also indirectly in their lives. The best stories and the ninjas who generally do the best are those who recognize that they're overcoming things in all aspects of their lives, not just accomplishing the mission through the obstacle course. Right. So I like that.
Well, and in their case too, and I would encourage your listeners to think about this. Sometimes it's also about changing the context of what we look at as a challenge to a game.
Yes.
So what if the next time we come up with a challenge, and I'm not saying that there aren't things that are difficult that we move through, but when we have a challenge, what if we changed our mindset that, man, this is a fun game to go through? And it's a challenge, not an obstacle. It's something that excites us and helps us to grow.
You know what? I love that. My son, Jaron, actually came up with a saying that I just dig. And he says, Mom, I get to go to the gym every day and work out.
There you go. I actually, if I may indulge, I have Please. A story. I have a story. This happened probably about 10 years ago, but my youngest son, he and his mom and I had just divorced, and he had decided to stay with me. And so she had moved to Hawaii. I stayed in Denver. He stayed with me. Fantastic young man. But I ended up being a single parent for the first time in my life. And ended up being the taxi car driver at this place and that place. And I was on the phone with one of my martial art instructor friends. And I'm going to be quite honest, I was dumping, I was venting, I was complaining about, I got to do this, I got to take him here. And he paused, and then he said words I'll never forget. He said, "Chris, just remember, you don't have to take your son to school. You get to take him to school."
Yeah.
And it was one of the more major life shifts that I've had, because I thought, wow, oh my gosh, the alternative would be he's 3,000 miles away and I never see him. And it was a wonderful life lesson.
That's beautiful. Yeah. So we get to overcome things, and we get to experience the not so fun stuff so we can really recognize the fun stuff. That contrast is so valuable to our growth and our learning. I just really appreciate that aspect of the human condition and what we are experiencing.
Right.
So when you think about the mindset of a champion and where you're going next with all of this, what do you love to do? What does Chris Natzke do all day, every day, or what would you love to do? I mean, give us your wish list.
No, I'll tell you what, if I had my brothers, and I think you know this about me because we've actually worked together in this regard. I love being in front of a room. I love being on stage. I love speaking. I love, in your case, Lindsay, how we've worked together in the past as I've worked with one of your groups in Washington State and speaking. And I love being on stage speaking. And, I think sometimes where I have the biggest challenge is, where do I really want to target? Although I think the message relates well, because I've done it, in corporations, and I've done it with your kids, which were a bunch of all-stars, and I've done it with at-risk youth that are incarcerated. But the message has resonance across, because people, I think, really, when they get beyond all of the filters, really understand that there's a part of themselves that's ready to come forward if they allow themselves the access to it.
I love that.
Yeah.
You're right. Oh my gosh. So you would love to be speaking more and sharing the wisdom that you've gleaned over these years with others who want to adopt a mindset of a champion. And by the way, I have seen Chris speak. I've been part of that experience, and he's amazing. So you're engaging, and your audiences just love you. They want to talk to you for hours afterwards.
Well, I had a blast with your folks too. And the other thing about that too, and I think your listeners may even serve them to reflect on this, but one of the reasons that I'm as inspired to give back in that way is because I had so many people that helped me along the way in that way, right? Yeah. I mean, I talk about my martial art instructor all the time. I have two men that I consider, both of them incredibly helpful to me. I had coaches, I had teachers, my parents, etc. And knowing that we have this earth journey, if you will, and now we have all these people that have influenced us along the way, and we have the opportunity to maybe play that role for someone else, that really inspires me.
Yeah, no doubt. And you are without a doubt one of the greatest service-minded people I've ever met. So I'd love to have you share with our audience the way to kind of get in touch with, who are you in service to? How can we be in service, and how do we find that? I had a coaching call earlier today that was in a conversation around that. And I remember the day that it became clear to me who I was in service to. Yeah. And I went, oh, this is so much easier now, because it's easier to focus your energy. And I'm curious if you have any hot tips for the listeners as to how to really find that, or what ways to ask the questions of yourself. Who am I in service to?
Totally. Well, I'll tell you what, the first thing I'm going to start with is this, is that it's super, super important for us to understand that in order for us to be of service, we first have to take care of ourselves. Mm-hmm. So I had another teacher one time tell me that you need to take care of yourself so you can help take care of others.
That is so true.
I grew up in a household, my mom and I are quite close, and I observed her for years as a nurse and the mother of three, and trying to do it all herself, and constantly being depleted from an energy standpoint, right? Mm-hmm. And not knowing that she needed to not give from the depths of her being, but give from the overflow, meaning how can she produce self-care first so that she can give? Because when you do that, then your energy to give is unstoppable.
Exponential. It's unstoppable.
Yeah, it's exponential, no doubt. Mm-hmm. So, but that being said, first learning to do that for yourself. Then the second thing is that when you're speaking with someone one-on-one, there's different things that they'll be saying to you. And then there's what they're saying, and then there's the energy behind what they're saying.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I think those who are of service are very in tune in terms of being great listeners, because sometimes just listening to someone can be your greatest act of service. Mm-hmm. And then the next thing I would say is, what are things that you love to do in terms of sharing your gifts, and what excites you? You know, if you're giving, you go, oh man, I don't want to show up here, this is really a drain. That's not where you want to be long term. But when you're able, for me, when I'm able to stand in front of a group of high school students and be able to connect with them and provide them something and have them come to me and say, wow, when you said that impacted me. Oh my gosh, my energy is unstoppable at that point.
I love that.
So those were the things that I would say. It's like, but make sure we don't, I think in our society, we wear this honor badge about lack of sleep and so much work that we do. And it might work in the short term, but over long term, it's just not going to work.
It really doesn't. And that's a great message for our next generation youth to really get, is that they kind of got sold a bill of goods about how they're supposed to work hard, and even homework. When I think about that term, it's sort of silly to me now. I wish there was a better, I call mine fun work. But it's how can we truly take care of ourselves and see what we're doing as a learning experience? So I learned about sacred self-care maybe about 10 years ago. And I will say that it has been one of the greatest gifts I've ever received, is making a list of what it is that feels good to me. And the moment that I had that light bulb go off, where it's like, oh, I could actually do that. I could make that request. Wait, I can take care of me. It was a mind blower. Like, honestly, and I don't know if anybody's listening out there who's feeling that same way, but growing up as a woman, we were taught you take care of everything and everybody else first. And like your mom, that was my world too. Yeah. And so I like the idea, and I'll just share this as a part of our conversation. Make a list of what truly feels good to you. Like, what are some of your favorite things that you like to do, Chris? I
love being out in nature, and I love yoga. So I mean, I taught yoga in the past, but that's not my area of expertise. But I love just being a student and being in that environment and just being there. And the other thing that I would add to that is not only write things down, which I think is a brilliant idea, Lindsay, but it's actually schedule it in your calendar.
Good. Yes. And I do that too. So in my world today, I live near Disney World, and one of my favorite things to do is just to go walk around the park. It's just another park. And I meet with people, and I maybe exchange pins with a few people, but I freaking just get so filled up in that energy and that vibration of what's going on at Disney World.
No doubt. And I also learned, and I've been actually quite good about this over the last year, is I've really been diligent about my sleep.
Oh, yeah.
And, I think that the average American is probably right around 5.5, 6 hours or something like that. And doctors will say 7.5 to 8 is what we should get. And I spoke to a group of high schoolers about a month ago, and we were asking the average amount of sleep they were getting per night, and it was about 5.
Wow.
And then I shared with them, I said, you may have heard the study that was done years ago about how many hours it takes to become an expert, right? To become a master. And generally, I think that term is like 10,000 hours, right?
Right.
I said, what they don't tell you about that study, though, is that those same people that were so diligent about 10,000 hours of practice also, on average, had about 10.36 hours of rest and or sleep per day.
Whoa.
And so what that study was saying is it's not just the continuous sleep at night, but they were taking time during the day in 30-minute blocks to rest, meditate or whatever, to recharge themselves so that now they could pour themselves into it. But we don't do that.
No, not even close.
Go until our fuse is so short and we lose it, right? Then we're burned out.
Yep. You're exactly right. So that, I think that is part of your mission, is in the mindset of the champion also. Just really looking at who am I and what am I here to do, and how can I take care of this one? I'm the only one that's like me. And if I don't take care of this one, who would do this?
Exactly.
Well, nobody would. So,
And when I'm at my best of self-care and taking care of myself, then I'm at my very best for serving others.
I love
Then
that.
I can show up at 100%, and I can be present with people, and I have much greater energy to share. And so I just think it's just such an important point for us to know. If someone was a professional athlete,
Mhm.
that's how they would approach their training, right?
You're exactly right.
So if our training or if our mission is to go out and impact the world, why not treat ourselves like professional athletes?
That's what I'm doing right now. Okay, nap time. No, just kidding. I do. I really appreciate that message, though. It is one that is not shared very widely, and I think it's a solid place for us to begin our journey to the bigger version of ourselves, whatever that means for each one of us, being the best us that we can be. Mm-hmm. So thank you. That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right. So when it comes to what you're working on now and being able to speak in front of audiences and share your story, what can we do to help you? What would be in service to you?
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, if anybody, excuse me, is interested in having me come and speak to any one of their organizations, I'd certainly love to have that conversation.
Okay.
Both either in the keynoting aspect of things, but also in the board breaking event that I do. I also have a weekly blog that I do called the Mind of a Champion Tip of the Week. Oh. So if people want to get on board with that and they want to share that message, I've been doing that. I've missed 1 week in the last, I think it's about the last 110 weeks. I've missed 1 week because my computer crashed. Other than that, I've got one up every week on Facebook and on LinkedIn. So as people, if they want to, shoot out and be friends with me and get on my mailing list, whatever, I'd love to have them share that message.
Chris, that's amazing. Would you please share with everybody how to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. They can go to my website, which is chrisnatzke.com. That's CHRIS, N as in Navy, ATZ as in zebra, KE.com.
Perfect. And they can find you there, and they can send you all kinds of notes.
Exactly.
And are you also on Facebook under that?
I am. Yeah, okay. If they go to, they'll be able to find me on Facebook and LinkedIn as well.
Wonderful. I know I'm LinkedIn and hooked into everything you're doing, so that's awesome. Thank you. And I just need to tell you, one of the things about Chris Natzke that is also another hot tip, you are the one person who exemplifies discipline and clarity. You just have that way about you. So if people, individuals, organizations, or whatever are looking for someone to bring that energy to their space, you live it. And I see it in you, and I just love that about you. So thank you for sharing that with me too. You're my mentor on that space. I appreciate it. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for being here with us today and for sharing your wisdom as a passion professor. You truly are. And I want to find some stages for you to be on. It's time. You got to be there.
All right, dear.
Thank you for joining us today at Earth.University, where transformation, education is changing the world. All of the information about our passion professor today can be found in the box below, so you can connect with them if you also share a similar passion or dream. If you'd like to be part of our humanity tribe or be considered to be on our show, please find us on LinkedIn or at www.Earth.University. Thank you for being you. We appreciate you wholeheartedly and wish you a magical day.